Good morning, everybody. I am Dr. Nitin Joshi, Professor in Neurology with teaching experience of 25 years, working as consultant neurosurgeon in Panvel. Today we'll discuss role of psoas hitch and renal dehiscence with inferior nephropathy in gaining additional ureteral length. First we'll see psoas hitch. Psoas hitch is actually stitch between bladder, that is posterolateral aspect of dome or fundus of bladder on side of ureteric injury or ureteric stricture to psoas minor tendon. If psoas minor tendon is absent, then deep stitches of psoas major muscle are taken. Actually, structure is not only psoas minor tendon but any strong fibrous tissue which offers good strong firm bite of reliable tissue so as to take off tension on anastomosis. Any tension on anastomosis means stretching of ureter. Stretching of ureter means stretching of ureteral artery. This ureteral artery is formed by anastomosis between multiple ascending and descending branches. This ureteral artery then runs along the course of ureter in its periureteral adventitial fatty sheath. Stretching of this ureteral artery results into ischemia. Hence, ischemia will result into ischemic necrosis at site of anastomosis. So, during healing process, this ischemic necrosis leads to stricture or stenosis at site of anastomosis. Stitches which are taken in psoas hitch are seromuscular, multiple in number, interrupted, bilaterally symmetrical, taken with absorbable suture material like 10 vicryl, 20 vicryl or 10 chromic catgut or 20 chromic catgut, and suturing should not be too tight to cause ischemia of bladder or ischemia of psoas minor or psoas major muscle. It is used along with ureteric reimplantation in case of lower ureteric injury, but this lower ureteric injury is still at higher level to achieve tension-free anastomosis. It is also used with Bohari flap in case of lower ureteric injury with comparatively larger defect when one cannot achieve tension-free anastomosis between ureter and bladder by ureteric reimplantation, even after combining maneuvers or procedures to increase the length of ureter by psoas hitch and renal dehiscence with inferior nephropathy. So, when the inferior nephropathy has been done, but in case of inferior nephropathy and psoas hitch is not able to complete the gap which is required to be filled, in that case you cannot go ahead with ureteric reimplantation directly, but you require Bohari flap. So here the three maneuvers which are done so as to have the continuity between ureter and bladder without tension, and that is renal dehiscence with inferior nephropathy, raising the Bohari flap, and psoas hitch with the help of the seromuscular stitches taken at the level of the base of the Bohari flap. With psoas hitch alone, additional length of 3 to 5 cm is gained. Contraindications to psoas hitch are small contracted fibrous bladder and previous pelvic surgery causing compromised blood supply to bladder called as vascular insufficiency of bladder. Prerequisite for psoas hitch is that bladder should have good capacity and compliance. That is, bladder should have good elasticity and distensibility. Then only ipsilateral horn of bladder can be stretched above and lateral to common iliac vessels on side of injury, that is on the side of reimplantation of ureter. If it is an elective surgery for ureteric stricture or ureteric injury, then pre-operatively one should do cystogram to confirm good bladder capacity and compliance. However, when one is performing ureteric reimplantation in emergency, since cystogram has not been performed preoperatively, then on table, semi-rigid urethral catheter is inserted in bladder and tented up for evaluation of elasticity and distensibility of bladder. Rationale or principle of psoas hitch is that in this procedure, due to raising of ipsilateral horn of bladder upwards and laterally, there is distortion of shape of bladder. However, distortion of shape of bladder does not interfere with normal functioning of bladder. Anastomosis is carried out between ureter with bladder horn with anti-reflux principle, that is by creation of submucosal tunnel if adequate urethral length is available for creation of submucosal tunnel and without tension. However, reflexing type of anastomosis will be performed between ureter and the horn of bladder if the length of ureter available is short. Incision and position of patient. Majority of times emergency surgery is performed through lower midline incision, hence position of patient is supine with slight head lobe. It can be performed through phalansteal incision combined with Gibson incision. Position for Gibson incision will be supine with head lobe with roller placed vertically between shoulder and flank on the side of ureteric reimplantation. 14 French Foley's catheter is inserted in strict aseptic precaution so that as per need bladder can be inflated, that is filled or deflated intraoperatively. First step is development of retropubic cave of Regius and both lateral perivesical spaces by sharp and blunt dissection. Note, more dissection of lateral perivesical space opposite to psoas hitch and ureteric implantation is required. For this, sweep fibrofatty tissue of back of pubic bones, pubic arch and side walls of pelvis. Now, bladder is made full with dilute betadine solution by asepto syringe. This is because in state of full bladder, parietal peritoneum gets reflected directly from fundus or dome of bladder. So, approach to bladder and reimplantation of ureter into bladder horn will become extraperitoneal. Now, incision on bladder. In case of ureteric reimplantation, that is ureteroneocystostomy, the incision on bladder should be semi-oblique, that is transverse type, but not vertical. Incision in short should be perpendicular to lie of ureter to be reimplanted. However, incision on bladder in case of Bohari flap is planned according to the bladder flap to be raised. Incision is initially marked with methylene blue and then incision is taken between two stay sutures at upper end and two stay sutures at lower end. Now, planning of semi-oblique or transverse incision on anterior bladder wall. Measure the length of anterior wall of bladder. Take the midpoint of this anterior wall of bladder, and just above the midpoint of anterior wall of bladder is the upper end of incision. Start from the upper point, the incision which is initially marked by the cautery, coagulating cautery, and it should be transversely in equatorial direction crossing midline, that is maximum circumference of the bladder. The incision initially is marked with the coagulating current so as to fulgurate the blood vessels which are present on the surface, and then cut again with coagulating current itself 1 to 2 cm at a time under vision. The transverse incision then is sutured vertically in Henike Mikulec principle. Once bladder is opened and urine is drained, finger is put in horn and stretched above and lateral to ipsilateral common iliac vessels. Once bladder is opened, incision can be extended laterally to increase the length. During reflection of horn of fundus or dome of bladder, supralateral to ipsilateral common iliac vessels. If adequate reflection is not possible in spite of initial mobilization of opposite wall from the lateral pelvic wall, then superior vesical pedicle of opposite bladder wall may have to be ligated to get more mobility to the bladder. Bladder receives its blood supply through posterior and lateral vesical pedicles. Lateral vesical pedicles are more constant and defined. Lateral vesical pedicles of bladder are superior lateral vesical pedicle, middle lateral vesical pedicle, and inferior lateral vesical pedicle. Lateral vesical pedicles can be easily identified by retracting bladder medially and placing thumb anteriorly and middle and index finger posteriorly to identify and then ligate and then cut. Superior lateral vesical pedicle consists of superior vesical artery with its accompanying superior vesical vein with fibrofatty lymphatic tissue in pelvic fascia. Just posterior to superior lateral vesical pedicle is ureter, and so while ligating this pedicle, one has to take care of this ureter. While taking seromuscular stitches from posterolateral aspect of fundus or dome of bladder, initially the lie of ureter and the site of making submucosal tunnel is checked. Then multiple bilateral symmetrical interrupted seromuscular stitches are taken with suture material like 10 vicryl or 20 vicryl or 10 chromic catgut or 20 chromic catgut with psoas minor tendon or deep stitches of psoas major muscle. Suturing should not be too tight to cause ischemia of bladder or psoas muscle. If stitches are taken from deep psoas major muscle, then care is to be taken to prevent injury to genitofemoral nerve, which is seen on psoas major muscle, and also one has to prevent injury to femoral nerve, which is present below psoas major muscle, which cannot be seen. After anastomosis between ureter and bladder, either by refluxing or non-refluxing principle, the horn of bladder which is raised is sutured in two layers. Inner layer is consisting of mucosa with partially submucosa by continuous interlocking suture with 30 vicryl material, while outer is seromuscular interrupted with 20 vicryl. On the opposite side, the suprapubic catheter is inserted and tube drain inserted in retropubic cave of Retzius. Note, if deep stitches through psoas major muscle are taken due to absence of psoas minor tendon, then postoperatively one has to evaluate strength, that is muscle power, and sensation of ipsilateral leg to confirm absence of injury to femoral nerve. If one notices reduction in muscle power and sensation of ipsilateral leg, then immediate re-exploration and release of psoas stitches should be performed so as to prevent permanent nerve damage. Now we'll discuss renal descensus with inferior nephropexy. In case of lower ureteric injury or lower ureteric stricture with comparatively larger defect, one can perform renal descensus with inferior nephropexy alone or with psoas hitch so as to achieve continuity between ureter and bladder with ureteric reimplantation only without need of Bohari flag. Also, in case of ileal ureter, the renal dehiscence with inferior nephropexy is useful because in ileal ureter there is replacement of ureter by ileum, and renal dehiscence with inferior nephropexy can decrease the length of ileum required. Renal dehiscence with inferior nephropexy provides additional length of about 8 to 10 cm. Since renal dehiscence with inferior nephropexy provides additional length, it decreases tension on anastomosis between ureter and bladder. Any tension on anastomosis means stretching of ureter. Stretching of ureter means stretching of ureteral artery. This ureteral artery is formed by anastomosis between multiple ascending and descending branches. This ureteral artery then runs along the course of ureter in its periureteral adventitial fatty sheath. Stretching of this ureteral artery results into ischemia, causing ischemic necrosis at site of anastomosis. So during healing process, this ischemic necrosis will lead to stricture or stenosis at site of anastomosis. While performing ureteric reimplantation for lower ureteric injury, if one realizes the need of renal dehiscence with inferior nephropexy, then already one has taken lower midline incision which can be extended upwards. If financial incision has been taken, then one of view of financial incision can be extended upwards to join not only Gibson incision but can also be extended upwards to expose kidney. If one has already anticipated the need for renal dehiscence with inferior nephropexy, then one can take thoraco-abdominal incision. Approach to renal dehiscence with inferior nephropexy is either extraperitoneal or transperitoneal. Many times, transperitoneal approach becomes easy and safe. During transperitoneal approach, colon on the side of injury, that is ascending colon or descending colon, is mobilized along white line of Tolt. In retroperitoneum, ureter is identified, isolated and hooked with infant feeding tube. Once Gerota's fascia is exposed, it is opened. Now the step is of mobilization of kidney. Kidney is covered with white fibrous capsule. Outside white fibrous capsule is perinephric fat. Perinephric fat is maximum along the lateral convex border of kidney and medial concave border, where it fills the renal hilum. Outside perinephric fat is the fibrous renal fascia called Gerota's fascia. The anterior layer of Gerota's fascia is called fascia of Tolt, while posterior layer of Gerota's fascia is called fascia of Zucker-Candle. There are thick trabeculae extending from anterior as well as posterior layer of Gerota's fascia through perinephric fat to renal capsule. Comparatively, stronger trabeculae are present at lower pole of kidney. Opening of Gerota's fascia longitudinally is the first step of mobilization of kidney. With artery forceps, anterior or posterior layer of Gerota's fascia is opened to create so much of gap so that two fingers of the operating surgeon can be inserted in the gap created. Under the control of two fingers, the Gerota's fascia is opened in upward and downward direction with cautery. While mobilizing kidney, assistant holds perinephric tissue at stretch near the capsule, thereby making the septas prominent, which are split or cut either with cautery or blunt tip scissors. Mobilization of kidney started first along the lateral convex border of kidney along with part of anterior and posterior surface of kidney. Then lower pole is mobilized first and then the upper pole. During polar dissection, polar vessels may come across which may have to be taken care of. For mobilization of upper pole, the traction is given to the lower pole so that the attachments of upper pole to the undersurface of diaphragm becomes prominent. The upper pole is attached to the undersurface of the diaphragm by strong fibrous attachments. These strong fibrous attachments are identified, isolated, ligated and cut to mobilize upper pole of kidney completely and away from ipsilateral adrenal gland. The ipsilateral adrenal gland is present in the gyrotous fascia but in separate compartment. Now, once the kidney is properly mobilized, the traction is given on the lateral surface because we have mobilized the anterior surface, posterior surface, lateral surface, lower pole, upper pole. Now what is remaining is the medial border. So now the traction is given on the lateral convex border to expose medial border and hilum, because in order that the kidney is mobilized and fixed downward, the vessels, that is the pedicle, has to be also skeletonized, and so the renal vessels are skeletonized except to the area near pugae so as to avoid injury to the blood supply to pugae and proximal ureter. With constant pressure on upper pole, the kidney is pushed inferiorly and rotated medially. By keeping constant pressure on upper pole in this position, the mobilized lower pole of the kidney is fixed to muscles of posterior abdominal wall in right iliac fossa. This fixation of lower pole of kidney is done with 3 to 4 interrupted stitches with 20 vicryl or 10 vicryl or 20 chromic catgut. This significant downward displacement of kidney results into significant ureteral redundancy. This ureter which is redundant is identified, isolated, hooked with infant feeding tube. By giving traction to the isolated hook ureter, the holding bands are made prominent, which are cut with blunt tip scissors, and adventitia is pushed towards ureter so as to preserve maximum blood supply to the ureter. Once the adequate ureter is mobilized, then one gains about 8 to 10 centimeter of additional length, which will serve the purpose of achieving tension-free anastomosis. Thank you very much.